James, I found it very, very captivating, interesting listening to you earlier this week. I think you were on with The Drive, talking about the atmosphere inside the Chiefs locker room. And as somebody who's covered a lot of big Chiefs games over the years, I found that very interesting. My question is, after being in that room, how much do you believe or trust in the Chiefs' ability to rally and still make it into the playoffs after a loss like that?
Well, Mike, you have to have some confidence, right? I mean, they don't know any different. I mean, they don't know anything other than success and playing in the postseason, specifically, obviously, in this Patrick Mahomes era. So you would think with the leadership that's there, with Andy Reid and Pat and Spags and everybody that is part of that organization, that this is what they're used to, and they'll make a find a way this back end of the season. I think it's very ironic for Broncos fans that we're essentially rooting for them this weekend against the Colts, because that helps the chances of Denver getting the number one seed. But in that room, it was very different than you're used to seeing. There's usually this confidence to them. The Broncos beat them in every way you could. They beat them actually the way Chiefs beat a lot of teams, which is complementary football. The special teams of the Broncos really outplayed an aspect that Kansas City has used in a lot of these games, and that's their special teams to win games. And so it's just very different than what you've seen in that locker room before. And talking to like Trent McDuffie, who really only knows winning, the corner, he was like, we just got to find a way in, and then we'll make some noise. Fascinating type of comment for somebody coming from the Chiefs, going, we just got to find a way in. I mean, it is a different mindset than they had in the past, but at the same time, they do know if they get in, people then again will maybe have a little bit of this fear of them, and rightfully so, probably a little bit.
Yeah, James, obviously this defense has been unbelievable. Offensively, kind of had this up and down season so far. What do you look for after this bye week from this offense? Do you think they can take a step and take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think they can, Mark, honestly. But it's such a weird year. Last night we saw Houston's defensive line just absolutely change the course of a game. We've seen Denver's defensive line change the course of games. We've seen the Rams' defensive line change games. We've seen the Seahawks, the Eagles. These defensive lines are playing a massive role in some of the success of some of these teams. It's how the quarterback plays opposite, I think, of their defense that is really determining some of the success on the back end, because this is just a different year. We don't have Burrow, Lamar, Mahomes, Allen just dominating, and you can't go out and play with those teams because those guys are playing at such a high level. The defenses are kind of carrying a lot of these teams, Mark. So, how does the offense continue to grow, be turnover adverse, find ways to be more, I guess, aggressive in a sense to hit some of these big plays and find ways to put points on the board, and at the same time play an appropriate manner to still know what you have on the other side of the ball. And I think that's the balance that they have to have moving forward.
Yeah, James, Broncos won 8 in a row. They're 9-2. Bye week time. Is this a good – usually you like having your bye kind of late, but they're on a roll right now. Do you think this is a good time for the Broncos to have their bye?
I think it is. When I talked to guys in the locker room, Stoke, it was like – I don't know what anybody was talking about with that mini bye we had. We didn't gain anything from that mini bye. We didn't feel better physically. We didn't gain anything in terms of getting ourselves back. You could tell there's a lot of people in that locker room kind of jonesing for this bye. I talked to Jonathan Cooper, who was like, you all know that hit he took in the ribs from Kareem Hunt on that chip block, and he was just like, I need this week, man. He's like, and so I get we're rolling here. But at the same time, I think physically down the stretch, and you look at the way the last 4 games really are, I think this is really big to kind of regroup before Washington and Vegas, which are 2 games you have to win to put yourself in a position to where, 13-4 might get you the 1 seed. And I think you have a realistic chance. So I get it. But at the same time, talking to players on this team, I think they kind of needed it in a sense, and where they were physically.
Visiting with James Palmer. And James, over the years, you've been in so many winning locker rooms and elite teams, and you know what it feels like. And I'm curious, being around the Broncos all this season and being in that room repeatedly after wins, do you get a similar vibe? Is it at least getting close to that kind of vibe?
Yeah, it's there. I think the vibe's there, certainly. I think there's a couple of things that jump out at me, and you're right. All those years I've spent with the Chiefs or the Eagles or these teams that are winning consistently, there's always a vibe in the locker room of you're happy you won the game, but you're not satisfied and you're not looking ahead. And I think those are the things that I'm seeing from this Broncos team where, yeah, they do think they played well and they do think they got, the better of the other team. And I think, the Chiefs is a good example of that game. If you talk to guys in the locker room after that game, they still weren't ahead of themselves. They weren't looking too far down the road, and they still are going, well, we need to be better in this. And we need to be better at that. And so I do think the vibe is very similar to a lot of these locker rooms I've been in, because I think Sean's created that culture. He did a really good job when he arrived here with a young team to just instill a belief in them where really there was no evidence to have that belief. And he kind of brought that into that room. And I think that's one of Sean's biggest traits as a coach, honestly, is to get the room believing that they are sometimes better than they actually are on the field and on paper. But that's one of his strengths. And I think this team has kind of followed that. And you can feel that in the locker room. Certainly can.
James, I have this theory about this offense, and Sean always preaches, hey, man, you've got to understand what it takes to win a football game, and I'm going to coach that way. But this offense has been up and down, as we've talked about, okay? So you're having 2 lattes with Sean, and he's got that truth serum going right now. I would say that this is an offense where you struggle. My explanation would be, or my cure to that would always be simplify, where Sean refuses to simplify. And my theory is this, and help me out and give me what you think about this theory. Sean refuses to simplify because he knows that this is a championship caliber defense, a championship caliber team, and we're going to have to be multiple when we get into the playoffs. So I'll take some short-term pain for long-term gain. What do you think of the theory?
Bingo. That's it. Like, I think you're seeing it with a lot of these second-year quarterbacks, Mark. And the growth of a quarterback is not linear by any stretch. But if you want that quarterback to grow, you can't keep relying on the things that they do well. If you want your unit to win successfully and continue to grow as a unit, you can't rely on the things that your quarterback does well. So I completely co-sign to what you're saying, because Sean understands there's a greater goal towards the end. And we're seeing this, honestly, guys, with a lot of the contenders. Like, bring up Philly. Like, their passing concepts are not very good. They just think they're going to win these matchups because they're more talented. This is an offense that is not satisfied with themselves in Philadelphia because they know it's not going to work. The same thing, I think, equates to Denver, where they know in the postseason the way they're playing offensive football is not entirely going to work. When I talked to guys in the Chiefs locker room, they did kind of say, like, it's not the most complicated thing we're going against. They executed it well. They've cut the field in half for Bo at times. They've made it a little bit easier on him. We know that Sean has the ability to do that and still scheme guys open. But I think Sean knows that he needs to do that and build it at the same time. And I think that's, if you want to get to where Denver thinks they can get to, they know the way they're playing offensive football right now won't work. So over the next 2 weeks and in this bye, the 2 games after this bye, you got to grow as an offense, but make sure that you find a way to have Bo play that way and make sure he doesn't turn the football over. That's where Philly's done it well, is they don't turn the ball over and they're good in the red zone. So they can still have these growing pains with another new offensive coordinator as they try to grow before the postseason. Good teams are able to do that and win at the same time. I think Denver's kind of done that through parts of this season to win and try to grow as an offense at the same time.
Great stuff, James. Awesome stuff every week. Enjoy your bye weekend, and we'll be right back at it again a week from now to get set. Really quick. You hearing anything about Jaden Daniels and a possible return for the Broncos game next Sunday night?
Yeah, we know where they're at as a season, and we know where he is physically. I don't think they're rushing that by any sense. I think this is going to really have to be like 100% during the week to have him get out there. It might be a stretch.
Okay. Thank you, James.
No problem.
James Palmer is part of our all-star lineup of NFL Insiders.